Today's briefing, Ukraine waited until 164 Russian tanks entered the corridor, then erased them all. If you think ambushes are about firepower, I've got a different lesson. Wins like Brovary start under the dirt. I've studied these operations for a decade. This one is the clearest case of immobility beating armor. Come with me through the corridor built. Mines mapped to choke points, seismic sensors tuned to track weight, culvert charges placed not to kill, but to stop. Then we'll step through how a stalled T-90 with 950mm frontal armor becomes vulnerable to drones and 155mm shells it could have shrugged off at speed. How do you trap heavy armor with tools the enemy can't shoot at? You start by turning their only road into a machine that bites down and never releases. Near Brovary, the approach was tight and unforgiving. One paved ribbon with culverts tucked under it and side ditches that won't carry a 50-ton hull. An armored column rolled in with advanced frontal protection, confident it could take punishment head-on. 18 T-90Ms led with BMPs and rocket artillery cover behind them. If they kept speed, their armor stack and supporting fires would mask weaknesses. Momentum, not armor thickness, was the real shield. So the defenders worked the ground first, and they logged soil load bearing so a tank wouldn't find a safe shoulder to pull onto. They walked the culverts and counted spans, marking which ones would drop the roadbed with the least explosive. They flagged choke points where a recovery vehicle could not pass a disabled tank. Then they built a sensor picture. Seismic and acoustic nodes along the verge to read weight, axle spacing, and march discipline. Those sensors don't care about smoke or jammers. They care about pressure and rhythm. Layered tools sat waiting. Pre-laid mines at offset distances would not wipe the column. They would cue behavior, swerve, brake, bunch up. Culvert charges were tuned for mobility kills, not fireworks. The aim was to shear a track, collapse a culvert, and trap steel. Think of the road as a ratchet. Each meter forward strips options. No shoulder to bypass, no turnoff to regroup. No space for a tow line to snake through. This plays into doctrine. Counter-mobility operations taught in field manuals for combat engineers don't chase kill counts. They strip movement and tempo. Tanks are built to defeat frontal penetrators. They struggle when stopped. Cross-eyed with a broken track, optics degraded by dust, and exhaust plumes pinned in place for drones. Immobilization creates overmatch. A stationary target turns every weapon into a sniper shot, and every minute adds pressure on crews and command. Once the lead and tail are stuck, time becomes a weapon. Artillery plots get precise. Drones loiter longer. Even small teams can aim at vision blocks, external fuel, and engine decks with calm breaths instead of hurried snapshots. No shots fired yet, but the corridor already bites. Now we track how Ukraine knew which road the column would choose. Days ahead. Why did Russian commanders pick the narrow road that favored the defender? Because when heavy armor moves under time and fuel pressure, the map lies and the math decides. Route prediction starts with the ground. Defenders sort roads by width and shoulder strength, then layer in bridge classifications, the military load classification numbers that tell you which spans hold a 45-ton IFV and which carry a 50-plus-ton tank. Any bridge below the threshold cuts an option. Tight curves, tree lines, and drainage ditches compress a column to single file. A 16-foot lane forces BMPs to line up and keeps recovery vehicles from passing a crippled lead. In that geometry, a convoy is already channelized before anyone fires. On paper, the Russians had choices. In practice, fuel planning, bridge ratings, and staying under an air defense umbrella narrowed the path. Stray too far from short-range air defensive, and drones arrive. Detour to a weaker bridge, and a single collapsed span ends the push. Every extra kilometer burns fuel the logistics tail cannot replace on schedule, so the best route often becomes the only route. Ukraine leaned into that predictability. Satellite change detection flagged fresh track marks at staging areas and new soil scars around depots. Drone thermal logs recorded engine heat cycles at night, revealing when units spooled up for movement. Local sources reported where convoy marshalling happened, and which lots filled with fuelers and ammo trucks. Those inputs refined the funnel. Look at the logistics lens, and the corridor snaps into focus. Railheads feeding tank transporters, resupply points with hardstand, and artillery coverage that shields refuel pauses all align along one axis. Put C2 nodes on the map and add air defense arcs, and you see the lanes commanders will pick to keep comms stable and missiles overhead. Speed matters, but the network that keeps a column alive matters more. Both sides made a bet. Russians wagered that a rapid run through the corridor would beat the defenders' setup. Ukrainians wagered they could time the trap. Once route certainty hit 70 to 80%, engineers wired obstacles to axle spacing and culvert positions with confidence. Payoff? Days before engines turned over, Ukraine had the road. With the route fixed, the plan moves from prediction to control. Freeze the lead in the tail, and the rest sits still. What turns heavy armor from a spear into a parked target range? Start by freezing the tips and letting the rest lock itself in. The plan was simple on paper and brutal in effect. Stop the lead in the tail, and the column stops thinking like attackers. and starts behaving like obstacles. Culvert charges under the front span were set to trigger off seismic signatures. The mass of a T-90 is a fingerprint. Mines keyed to axle spacing sat near the rear. The first detonation isn't about spectacle. It's about snapping a track and dropping roadbed so the lead hull slews sideways. The last blast is a tail strike that punches the recovery plan in the throat. Now the geometry takes over. A narrow lane, soft shoulders, drainage on both sides, no bypass, no crane truck fitting through. Frontal protection rated for thick penetrators doesn't help a tank that can't move its nose. Stopped armor can't shield tracks, external fuel drums, sights, or the thin engine deck. Once the lead is wedged, the driver behind brakes hard. Spacing collapses. Every crew now stares at dust and exhauster with zero lateral options. Sequencing matters. Lead culvert detonates. Tail mine goes. The convoy becomes a line of stuck steel. Forward observers mark the stall. Drones send grid updates with angles on engine heat and turret orientation. 3 PZH-2000s cut in with 155mm high explosive 2 walking rounds through the middle third first, not the ends, to build more blockages. Leopards engage from standoff, picking shots at optics and exposed ammunition. FPV drones run the seams, diving on engine decks, track hubs, and the backs of BMPS. Stationary targets spike hit probability and compress reaction time. Crews lose the seconds they need to pop smoke, re-angle, or push a tow bar. Secondary blasts follow when ammo cooks off. The shock and fragments punish the packed vehicles behind. One jammed spear point becomes a story of logistics dying on camera. The stalled rhythm reveals fuelers and ammo trucks sandwiched between fighting vehicles. Loitering munitions sweep the rear slice, hitting soft skins first to drain the column's ability to move or shoot. Electronic warfare adds slack in the net. Jamming and decoys force air defenses to look the wrong way, creating a wider window for drones to work. Immobilization unlocked the kill. Precision tools only needed a few minutes to finish what buried charges began. With the column fixed, the fight shifts from destruction to containment and denial of maneuver. Why not destroy everything? Because control pays bigger dividends. With the column fixed, the fight moved into a city center kill zone shaped days earlier. A containment perimeter tightened around the stalled line. Fresh mines closed side lanes. Buried sensors tracked movement on foot and on tracks. Artillery batteries had pre-registered fires for every intersection and courtyard likely to host a turn. Streets that looked open concealed chain link of effects. Trip flares for infantry, anti-vehicle charges on culverts, and command wires tucked through basement walls. The job wasn't to erase metal, it was to deny motion. Russian support tried to crack the ring. Rocket launchers reached for suppression fires. Short-range air defenses pushed forward to clear the air for helicopters. Crews tested smoke and reverse routes, calling in engineers and recovery vehicles. Each move hit a counter. Counter-battery radars sniffed launch points and fed fast fire missions onto rocket crews before they could displace. Manpad's teams set up near likely helicopter run-ins, low, straight approaches along rivers and rail lines, forcing pilots high and wide, where drones and artillery could work. Decoy emitters and inflatable signatures drew air defense radars into the open. Once they lit up, strikes followed and the lanes stayed shut. The rhythm settled in. Strike, to shock the formation. Suppress, to keep heads down. Wait for the panic move, an armored truck edging into a side street, a BMP nudging a fence line, then close that gap with pre-laid obstacles and quick-lay mines. Containment drains ammo and time. It pulls commanders off their plan into a cycle of rescue, recover, and reset. The unit still holds vehicles, but not freedom of movement. And that is the more valuable terrain. Partial destruction proved sharper than total. Survivors inside the ring couldn't regroup or attack. They sat, burned fuel for generators, and watched their windows to move, shrink. Rear area fires on fuel bladders and ammo stacks sealed it. Flames near the resupply point forced crews to abandon vehicles still mechanically sound. By 7 a.m., maneuver was denied. No further push followed because the space to fight no longer existed. That outcome didn't come from luck. It came from groundwork that rigs the battlefield before the first shot, and from a plan that treats movement as the target. The real killer wasn't a shell or a drone. It was the loss of movement engineered days in advance. Once momentum died, armor became inventory, and every weapon that mattered gained time and angles. That's the quiet math. Behind a column erased without a frontal duel. Ukraine's ambush at Brovary shows how control of movement defeats firepower. If this changed how you think about armor versus obstacles, share it. Tell us where you want the next corridor fight dissected. Drop the town, the road, the terrain feature. We'll pull it apart together. Firepower wins battles. Control of movement wins campaigns. Watch the ground under the track, because that's where the next decisive blow gets planned. Briefing complete. Subscribe to Mission Command HQ and turn on notifications. The next mission breakdown is already underway.